Note the condition of the housing. What's the first thing you should do before beginning disassembly? Touch your choice. Ensure that dirt and debris are removed from the housing. This protects the bearing surface from contamination during disassembly. Look for the match marks, which will help realign the parts during reassembly. Inspect the housing for fractures or indications of problems prior to disassembly. After unbolting the bearing cap, inspect the bearing surfaces. Check the bearing before cleaning it so that you don't wash away some of the clues as to why the bearing failed. Babbitt is a relatively soft material. It can wipe when hot spots develop. Wiping occurs when pieces of the bearing surface stick to the shaft, causing grooves to develop in the bearing. If it's necessary to clean the bearing, follow your facility's guidelines on the proper use of solvents. The pillow block bearing in this example will not be repaired. It will need to be replaced. Typically, you'll use the number from the old housing to determine the appropriate replacement bearing. If you can't see a number, you'll need to determine the type and size of the housing, the bearing material and type of lubricant, and the shaft size. With this information, you can determine an exact replacement. Next, clean the shaft. If there are imperfections, they can disrupt the lubricant film and mar the surface of the bearing. What else should be done to the shaft prior to assembling the bearing? Touch all that apply, then touch Enter. Check for taper. Measure the shaft diameter at both ends and the middle. All three measurements should be equal. Make sure the shaft is not out of round by taking 2 measurements of the diameter. Take the first measurement, then take a second measurement 90 degrees from the first. Both measurements should be equal. Keep the replacement bearing in the box until you're ready to inspect it. Bearings need to be protected from dirt and dust. Inspect the replacement bearing for nicks and scratches. They can disrupt the lubricant film which the shaft rides on. Carefully remove any flaws with a scraper. Grease the bearing before you install the shaft so it doesn't run dry at startup. Use the correct amount and type of lubricant. Follow the manufacturer's guidelines and your facility procedures. Also, check that the fittings and match marks line up properly. After reassembly, give the bearing time to wear in. Then take readings to establish baseline data for the new bearing.